hospitals don't stay empty. They remember, and sometimes they remember you back. Down sterile hallways where the lights shouldn't flicker, you hear footsteps that don't belong to the living, and whispers leaking through rooms no one has opened in decades. Welcome to Scary Nights by Malik. Tonight, we're stepping inside the kind of hospital people avoid even in daylight, the ones where the air feels heavier than it should, and the walls hold secrets that were never written down. Get comfortable, if you can, because these aren't stories from the internet. These came from people who walked inside an abandoned hospital and walked out changed. Let's begin. Most people who worked night shifts at St. Alora's talked about the nurses' wing. They said that after midnight, you could hear footsteps pacing the halls, even though the last patient ward was cleared out years ago. I didn't believe it until the night I had to check the building's security cameras alone. It was a Friday, close to 2 a.m. The rain hadn't stopped since evening, and the power kept flickering. I was monitoring the feed from the front office. 8 grainy cameras showing empty corridors, stairwells, and the old nurses' station at the far end of the West Wing. Then one monitor flashed. Camera 4, the hallway outside the nurses' wing. A woman was standing there. She wore an old-fashioned nurse's uniform, white dress, cap tilted slightly, hands clasped in front of her. Her head was bowed, face hidden by shadow. The timestamp on the feed glitched, stuttering back and forth between 2:13 and 2:14. I leaned forward, trying to focus. The camera was motion activated. Nobody else was supposed to be in the building. "Base, you seeing this?" I called over the radio. Static. Then, click. Every light in the hallway went out on screen, and the woman lifted her head. Her face was pale, features sunken and wrong, like the skin didn't fit right on the bones. She looked straight into the camera. Then she started walking, slowly, down the hall toward the nurses' station. The feed began to blur, and a thin line of text flickered across the bottom of the screen. "Room check required." I grabbed my flashlight and headed for the West Wing. The storm outside made the windows tremble, and each thunderclap echoed down the empty corridors like a heartbeat. By the time I reached the nurses' wing, the smell of antiseptic hit me, strong, like someone had just cleaned the floors. But they'd been abandoned for over 20 years. My radio crackled to life. A soft, distorted voice came through. "Room check required." It repeated once, then cut off. The old nurses' station was just ahead, a desk buried under dust and paperwork yellowed from age. A single wheel from a gurney squeaked as I passed. Then I heard it. Footsteps, soft, steady, coming from the hallway behind me. I turned my light that way, but it only showed the peeling walls and flickering shadows. I tried the radio again. "Base, if this is a joke, it's not funny." Nothing. When I turned back, there was someone standing behind the desk. She looked exactly like the nurse on the camera. Same white uniform, same motionless stance. For a second, I thought she was a mannequin, until her head tilted just slightly, and I saw her eyes. They were completely black. My flashlight flickered, and the temperature dropped so fast my breath fogged. The nurse raised her hand and pointed toward the corridor behind me. Her lips moved. I didn't hear anything at first. Then a whisper, soft but clear. "Medication. Overdue." Something clattered on the floor. I looked down and saw an old glass syringe rolling toward my boot. When I looked up again, the nurse was gone. Every light in the wing turned red. Emergency bulbs I didn't even know were still wired. Alarms wailed, echoing through the hall. A sign on the wall flashed code blue in faded letters. I ran. Halfway to the exit, I heard wheels screeching behind me, gurney wheels, fast. I didn't dare look back. but I could hear metal rattling and that faint whisper chasing me down the corridor. Medication. Overdue. I reached the stairwell door and slammed through it, running until I hit the main lobby. When I turned, the alarms had stopped. The building was silent again. Back in the office, I replayed the camera feed. The footage showed me walking into the nurses' wing, flashlight trembling. Then, as I reached the nurses' station, the screen distorted, static, white noise, nothing but snow for 30 seconds. When the picture came back, the hallway was empty. I stared at the screen, breathing hard. Then something caught my eye. On the desk where I'd seen the nurse, a small object was visible under the dim light. I paused the footage and zoomed in. It was the same syringe, only this time it wasn't empty. Inside was a thin layer of dark red liquid. The next morning, the supervisor found me still sitting there, pale and shaking. He said the nurses' wing was never on the security system. That section's power lines had been cut decades ago. Camera 4 didn't even exist. That night, I threw the keys to the hospital in the river. I told myself I was done with that place. But 2 weeks later, I woke to the sound of footsteps pacing the hallway outside my apartment. Slow, soft rubber soles. Then a voice whispered through the door, familiar, calm, and cold. Medication. Overdue. Rain hammered the roof like it wanted in. The halls of St. Elora's hospital groaned with every gust of wind, and the smell of damp plaster clung to the air. I was the last one there that night, just finishing the final survey before demolition. My flashlight beam wavered over peeling paint and rusted gurneys as thunder rolled somewhere above. It should have been a simple job, but the moment I stepped into the east wing, the temperature dropped. My breath came out in a faint mist, and then I saw it. A dim white glow at the end of the hall. It pulsed slowly, like someone walking with a lantern. Nobody else was supposed to be inside. The power had been cut years ago. I called out, "Hello? Anyone here?" Silence. Just the wind pushing through broken windows. Still, I followed it. The light led me to a set of chained double doors. The sign above was half-burned, but when I wiped the dust away, I read the words, Ward 9. That name stuck with me. I remembered the report. This section had been sealed after the 1987 fire. 6 patients died when the oxygen tanks exploded. Nobody had reopened it since. I tugged the chains. They were new, shiny, untouched by rust. Someone had locked these doors recently. Then came a faint sound from inside. Beep, beep, beep. A heart monitor. I froze. The whole building had no electricity. I leaned closer, ear to the door. The beeping grew louder, and underneath it, a woman's voice whispered, "Please, help me." It was so soft. It barely sounded human. "Hello?" I said. "Who's there?" No answer, just the faint hum of the machine. Then again, the voice, trembling now. "Please, don't leave me here." My stomach tightened. I raised my flashlight, angled it through a thin gap between the doors, and nearly dropped it. A woman stood inside the ward, barefoot, wearing a pale hospital gown. Her skin was gray, her eyes huge and glassy. She looked right at me and reached out. The chains began to rattle. I stepped back, heart pounding. The metal links twisted, clinking one by one until they fell loose at my feet. The doors creaked open. The smell hit first. Burnt wood, chemicals, and something else. Something old and sour. The light inside wasn't from a bulb. It hung in the air like fog, glowing white. The walls were scorched black, and yet one bed stood untouched, perfectly clean, sheets tucked tight. A monitor beside it blinked. The screen flashed a single word, "Admitted." Then I heard footsteps, soft, bare, slow. I turned my flashlight toward the sound. Nothing, just the steady rhythm of that impossible beeping. The glow pulsed again, faster this time, and a shadow rose inside it, faint at first, then clearer. The woman was lying on the bed now, still, eyes wide open, her head turned toward me, stiff and jerky, like her neck didn't work right. The monitor screamed a flat line. I stumbled backward, bumping into the door frame. The light swelled until everything went white. When I came to, I was outside in the rain, coughing, flashlight gone, the distant sound of sirens getting closer. They said I'd called the police myself, babbling about someone trapped in Ward 9. I don't remember making the call. The fire crew searched the entire hospital. They found no one, but they said the alarm system had somehow turned itself back on, for the first time in 30 years. The next morning, I went back to collect my gear. The east wing was sealed off again, heavy new chains bolted tight. But hanging from them was my ID badge, melted around the edges, and smeared across the door in black ash were 2 words, admitted again. I quit that job the next week. Every now and then when it storms, I swear I hear that same faint beep, beep, beep through the rain. Sometimes it's close enough that I reach for the radio out of habit, but I never answer it, because deep down, I know what I'll hear on the other end. That trembling voice, whispering from somewhere behind those locked doors. Please, don't leave me here. The basement of St. Elora's was never part of my assignment. It wasn't even on the blueprints the city gave us. But when I found the rusted elevator door behind a boarded-up corridor, curiosity got the better of me. There was no power, of course, but the gate stood slightly open, and behind it, nothing but blackness that smelled of earth and chemicals. The fire marshal warned us to stay out of any unlisted areas, but I'd been working alone for hours. My flashlight caught a set of narrow concrete stairs just beyond the elevator shaft. The walls were slick with moisture, and faint water dripped somewhere in the dark. As I descended, the sound of the rain above faded, replaced by something else. Soft humming, a woman's voice, low and tuneless, echoing faintly through the concrete. "Hello?" I called. "Anyone down here?" The humming stopped. I almost turned back then, but the beam of my light hit something at the bottom of the stairs, a sign covered in grime. I wiped it clean with my sleeve. The letters were faded, but I could still make them out. Ward B, not storage, not records. Ward. The hallway stretched out in both directions, lined with old wheelchairs, gurneys, and broken IV stands. I could see where fire damage had eaten through parts of the ceiling, exposing pipes like veins. But at the far end, one room was lit. Just faintly, a dull orange glow bleeding through a half-closed door. I took a few steps forward. The smell changed, burnt rubber and disinfectant. My boots crunched over shattered glass. Then came the sound. Click, click, click. At first, I thought it was dripping water. Then it quickened, like fingernails tapping on metal. "Who's there?" I said, voice shaking. No answer. I reached the glowing doorway and pushed it open. The room looked like a surgical ward. 3 metal beds, blackened from fire, and shelves full of glass jars. My flashlight shook as I swept it across the far wall. The jars weren't empty. Some held bones, others small shapes floating in dark fluid. And in the center bed, someone was lying there. The light came from an old lantern set on the floor beside them. The figure was covered with a white sheet, thin as paper. I don't know why I did it. Maybe shock, maybe denial. But I reached out and lifted the corner of the cloth. Underneath was a burned corpse, or what was left of one. The skin was blackened, lips drawn tight over teeth. But what froze me wasn't the body, it was the eyes. They were open and wet, still alive. The mouth moved, no breath, no sound, just a whisper of motion. And then a faint voice rasped out from nowhere. "Turn it off." The lantern beside the bed flickered. The glass shook as though something inside was pushing to get out. Then all the jars on the shelves started to rattle. One by one, their lids popped open, and that humming I'd heard earlier came back, louder, layered with whispers. I stumbled back toward the door. The light dimmed, then flared so bright I had to shield my eyes. When it died down, the bed was empty. The sheet lay flat, but the burn marks where the body had been were still smoking. Something brushed past me, cold and weightless. The whisper came again, right at my ear. "Turn it off." My flashlight died. In the pitch black, I felt movement all around me. Bare feet scraping over tile, something dragging metal. I bolted for the stairs, half blind, the whisper chasing me up the steps. When I burst back into the main hall, the air felt heavy, almost alive. I slammed the door shut behind me and braced it with a loose board. The humming stopped. Everything went still. I stood there, shaking, trying to breathe. Then I saw it, my flashlight, flickering weakly in my hand. For a split second, the reflection on the metal wall showed something standing behind me. A tall shape, wrapped in burned sheets, eyes glinting orange like the lantern flame. I turned, and it was gone. The demolition team came 2 days later. I didn't go back inside, but when they sealed off the basement entrance, the foreman told me something strange. He said they found a lantern still burning down there, its flame steady and bright. It wouldn't go out, no matter what they did, until the power saws started. Then it shattered on its own, glass bursting like a scream. That night, I woke to the smell of smoke. No fire, no heat, just that same burnt hospital scent filling my room, and faintly, from somewhere in the dark corner, came the sound of metal tapping, click, 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 followed by a whisper I'll never forget. "Turn it off."